Cassidy was reaching for. Kerouac celebrates Neal Cassady in biblical prosody, sainting him the western kinsman of the sun, a light-hearted lover who learned his lessons from the lilies of the field, an embodied emissary of the wisdom teachings of Ecclesiastes, who hungers for nothing more than bread and love. But Cassady's contagious beauty begs a dark side too. Eddington elaborates, in this man's life and way of being, we see both the divine and the demonic, the glorious and the desperate dimensions of living in the now. Sadly, history recounts what happens to this super sage of On the Road. He leaves his wife and kids. He joins the merry pranksters. For a while, he tutors and is tutored by the likes of Timothy Leary, Ken Kesey, and the Grateful Dead, all true professors of profuse insight and indulgence, of intense and incessant 1960s prodigality. Like many addicts, Neal Cassady bought suicide on the installment plan, imbibing and ingesting his way to the other side. In early February 1968, days shy of his 42nd birthday, the former railroad worker and living legend of the modern nomads, Neal Cassady, collapsed on some train tracks in Mexico, traveling by foot the night after a wedding party from one town to the next. He was found in a coma and taken to the hospital where he died. While the exact cause of Cassady's death is unknown and much legend and speculation have accumulated around it, overdose from a combination of barbiturates and alcohol is one of many possibilities. About a year before his death, Neal Cassady apparently told a young friend, "Don't do what I have done." Eddington accurately assesses the awe and wonder on the one hand, and the disgust and anger on the other that society brings to its holy fools, concluding his remarks about Cassady with a tone of both reverence and warning. In living the life that he did, and I'm quoting Neal Eddington again, not Neal, whatever Mr. Eddington's name is, in living the life that he did, Neal Cassady made himself the target for both sets of reactions. He died for our fantasies as well as for our self-righteousness. We yearn to be like him, and we righteously thank God we're not like him, all in the same thought. For better or for worse, Cassady's free spirit, immortalized in the lyrics by the Grateful Dead, a child of countless trees, a child of boundless seas, attains a mythic and messianic quality in relation to the hippie counterculture of the 1960s. To speak of Cassady the man in Christ-like terms is largely a poetic gesture of allegiance to the uncommon life force that resonated from him. Because of his countless walks on the wild side, Neal Cassady learned of the historical Jesus Christ's greatest gifts the hard way. In the late 1950s, he was busted for marijuana, and there's a book of letters that he wrote while in prison in the late 1950s. It was published under the pithy and perfect title, Grace Beats Karma. Grace Beats Karma. In her foreword to the published version of the book, Carolyn Cassady, Neal's ex-wife, comments at some length about Neal Cassady's connection to the historical Jesus. She calls him in this section as the last in a long line of gurus to enlighten the planet, who brings us closer to the spirit and love available to all. Carolyn Cassady suggests that the spirit cannot judge, condemn, punish, or play favorites, suggesting that most of our misery is of our own making. Heaven and hell are within us, she writes. Sadly, Sal Paradise did not fare much better than Dean Moriarty. In On the Road, Kerouac already fears fame, writing, "Anonymity in the world of men is better than fame in heaven." That's a quote that stuck with me, and I had to read it over and over again, so I'll say it again for you. Anonymity in the world of men is better than fame in heaven. By the time On the Road makes Kerouac famous, the unofficial spokesman of the Beat generation, he's already tumbling quickly towards death as he drowns himself in alcohol. Facing the intersection of fame and full-blown alcoholism, his early 1960s book, Big Sur, is both beautiful and ugly, both hopeful and utterly heartbreaking. Throughout Big Sur, Jesus and Buddha were always right there, somehow inside of Kerouac, yet always out of reach. We know from history and personal experience, in my case, that a deep spirituality is one of the best known treatments for alcoholism. But Kerouac proves that spiritual inclinations alone are not enough to propel some to recovery. In Big Sur in particular, but throughout the 1960s, Kerouac heads towards his final bottom but never gets there.